Sometimes we face trials in life. We face pains and heartaches. Why do we experience trials? What benefits do they give us, or how do they help us grow and develop as a Christian? So, in this video, I'll explain the purpose of trials and how we can overcome them in our lives. Let's first turn to James chapter 1, verse 2. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. So, in this verse right here, it says that when you fall into various trials. So, notice it says when, right? So, sometimes in life we think that, oh, that trials are avoidable, that we don't have to go through trials. But in this verse, it says that when you go through trials, so that means that eventually you will face trials in life, right? If it says the word if, right? If it says if you fall in trials, that means that there's a possibility you won't go through it, right? But in this verse right here, it says that when, that means all of us will face trials in life. All of us will face different pains and heartaches, different trials that come against us. And then it says that, when you fall into trials. So in our life, trials is like a trap, right? And think about, a person trying to catch an animal, right? They try to trap it, make it fall into like a hole or something, right? Likewise, these trials, they try to trap us. These trials try to discourage us. These trials try to hold us down, right? Just like an animal, caught in a trap will fall into a pit, right? The point of the pit is to hold the animal down, right? To trap the animal, right? And so likewise, these trials, they try to hold us down. They try to weigh us down, right? And so many times because of that, we think that, oh, that trials are bad, right? If you think about, oh, an animal falling to a hole, right? As acting as a trap, right? We think, oh, those things are bad, that, a trap is bad or trials are bad in our life. But in the beginning of the verse, it said, count it all joy when you fall into trials, right? So we should be happy about trials. When we think about trials, we think immediately, oh, no, trials are bad. We don't want trials, try to avoid it as much as you can. But trials, this verse says that we should be happy when we go through trials. We should be joyful. We should be thanking God for trials in our life. Many when you guys hear me say this, maybe think, oh, why should I be happy about trials? Why should I want to go through trials? But this verse says, be happy. Count it all joy. Not just regular joy, but all joy. So be very happy. Be very grateful when you go through trials of life, right? And in the end of the verse, right, in verse 2 says into various trials, right? Sometimes we only ask God, oh God, give us the easy trials in life, give us the simple ones, right? But the verse right here says various trials. So that means we'll be facing, many different types of trials, the easy ones, the hard ones, the narrow ones, the wide ones. We face all different types of trials in our life, right? And not just the trials we're comfortable with or just the easy ones, but different types of various trials that we face in life, right? And in those trials, even the easy ones all the way to the hard ones, we should be thanking God and be happy that we're facing through it. And you'll be asking, why should we be happy? Why should I be happy about trials in our life? And if we go on to the next verse, in verse 3, it says, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. And so we see this right here, how, these trials provides the benefit. Trials don't just discourage us, they don't just weigh us down, right? But in the verse right here, saying that, there's a better side to the trials. There's a reason why we should go through trials. And it's saying that through these trials is testing of our faith. So these trials are testing us like fire, right? Just like how gold is refined in fire, just like how silver is refined in fire. Likewise, these trials refine us. They improve us, they make us more pure, they make us more high quality, right? The reason why we put gold in fire, right, or gold into a furnace is so that the high quality gold can come out. If you have gold, right, these gold may be filled with different types of impurities, right? It'd be filled with, different metals or different coppers and all those things in the gold, right? But the moment you take in a fire, right, so the way that gold gets purified is because of the melting point, right? So silvers and those metals and copper, right, they have a lower melting point. So when you have the furnace and you increase the heat in the furnace, right, those metals and those coppers will just melt away. They'll just go and separate from the gold. But since the gold has a higher melting point, right, is able to the gold is able to stick together while the copper and the metals get separated from the gold. And so likewise in our life, right, the more fire that we have, the more refined we'll be, right? The more fire we have, the higher the melting point, right? Then those impurities will melt away while the trueness or the goodness within us will stay intact, right? And likewise, these trials do the same thing, right? This verse it says testing you with faith, right? So these trials test us like how gold is tested by fire, right? And so they refine us, they change us, they remove all impurities from us, right? And we see that, this testing is about faith, not necessarily our hope or our peace or anything. It's testing our faith to see how high quality of our faith do you have, right? If you have a low quality faith, right, that easily, that fire will make you crumble. Easily that fire will make you melt. But if you have a high quality faith, you're able to withstand that fire. You're able to withstand, the heat of trials in our life, right? And so we see that, this testing our faith, right? This refining our faith, right? And verse 3 says that it produces patience. And so we see that, in refining our faith and pure in removing all the iniquities from our faith, right? Then it produces this high quality thing called patience. And so we see that, this patience, helps us to withstand those trials, right? Suppose someone going to the gym, right? Initially when you go to the gym, everything is super heavy, it's super hard to lift the weights, right? But over time, because you would continue going through that trial of the gym, right? Because the gym isn't easy, right? Gym is like a trial. So when you go to the trial of the gym, right, it produces strength within you, right? It's testing your strength, it's testing your muscle. And because that, it produces within you, strength and muscle and all those things, right? And likewise, these trials of life, right? Think about like going to the gym, right? These trials, they test us, they test our strength, they test our faith in life, right? And through that testing, we build the spiritual muscles, right? And we build, patience within our life, right? And so this refining and this testing our faith produces patience in our life. And then going down to verse 4, it says, "But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing." And so in the beginning of the verse, it said, "Let patience have its perfect work." So there's a certain work that patience does, right? It says that patience does a perfect work. So there's something patience does. There's a certain work that patience does in our life, right? And so this patience, right, achieves this work, and that this something certain achieves, right? There's something specific it achieves, right? For example, if I say, "Oh, I need to go do this work," right? There's a specific thing that I need to do, right? If I say that, "Oh, I have to do homework," that means that there's a certain work I have to do at home because of school, right? And so likewise, patience has this certain work. There's certain thing that patience has to do, right? And it says, so let patience have its perfect work. So when we develop patience in our life, there's something that patience does for us. There's something that patience does for our benefit, right? And it says, let patience have its perfect work, right? And so this work that patience is doing is a high quality work. You know, Suppose I'm trying to bring somewhere or bring say I'm a construction company, right? And I'm trying to bring concrete or bricks from one place to another, right? I can bring it through a wheelbarrows. I can bring it by hand, or I can bring it by a small car, or I can bring it by truck, or I can bring it by a massive truck, right? And so there's different ways I can achieve the work of moving concrete from one area to another, right? I can bring in a wheelbarrow, but that requires lots of effort. That requires lots of work. But if I have a big, train or big, truck, right, I'm able to perform that work of moving concrete from one place to another much easier, right? And so likewise, we see that patience has this perfect work. So there's this work that patience does. It's the highest quality work. Patience isn't doing, lousy work. Patience isn't doing lazy work. Patience is doing the perfect work. There's something amazing. There's something powerful that patience is doing when we have patience in our life, right? And so, patience, when we think about patience, right? Sometimes we think that, oh, patience is passivity, right? Sometimes patience means, oh, I'm just sitting there, doing nothing, just waiting. Patience is not waiting. If we think, patience is just waiting, right? That's not the true meaning of patience. Patience is not passive. Patience isn't useless, right? Patience is a word like this verse is saying, right? There's something that patience is doing in our life. Sometimes, when I think about patience, I just think about patience as something passive. I just think patience is just waiting there doing nothing. That's what I think patience is. But actuality, patience is achieving something. Patience is refining you. For example, think about Abraham in the Bible, right? It says that Abraham had to wait a very long time, years, for him to see the promise of Isaac into his life, right? And so for him, Abraham waiting for so many years, right? That requires patience in Abraham's life, right? So Abraham wasn't just sitting there, just waiting for 20, 30 years to go by, right? Abraham wasn't just waiting there doing nothing, right? Abraham had patience, and that patience was refining him. That patience was working something within him, working something perfect, like this verse says, right? And so patience is not passive. Patience is just not waiting. Patience is achieving a perfect work within you. And so we see in the rest of the verse, right, it says that that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. So we see the specific work that patience is doing. Patience is not just sitting there doing nothing. Patience is not just waiting, but we see that this patient is doing the work of perfection within us. So it says that we may be perfect and complete. So the work that patience is doing is making us perfect. So patience is refining our hearts. Patience is refining our character. Patience is, making us perfect in our life, making us complete, right? And so what does it mean by complete? What does it mean that patience is making us complete? Think about the story of Abraham, right? Abraham was waiting, 10, 20, 30 years for Isaac, right? He's waiting for that promise that God has for him, right? And so, sometimes in life, when we wait for a promise from God, right? We feel incomplete, right? Sometimes we think, oh, once I receive that promise, I'll be happy, right? Say for example, that God wants to, God give this promise of blessing your word, right? That God will bless you in your workplace, right? Right now in your job, you may not see that, right? Right now in your work, it may seem too stressful. Right now in your job, you may not, get paid a lot, right? And so when you reflect on that promise that, oh, God wants to bless me with that, you feel discouraged, right? Because when you look at your present circumstances, you don't see that promise, right? And so you have to have patience. And so in that patience, you feel incomplete, right? You feel incomplete. Oh God, when will you give me this promise? You feel incomplete because you think, oh God, right now I have nothing. Why aren't you blessing me right now, right? And so when God gives us a promise, within our hearts, sometimes we develop incompleteness, right? We think that only will become complete only when we receive that promise, right? We think that only will be happy if we receive that promise, right? But we see that patience, makes us complete. So that means, right, that even though I have not received the promise right now, even though that I don't have it right now, that patience is making me complete. Instead of me being incomplete because I don't have that promise right now, the patience is filling that hole within my heart. Patience is filling that emptiness within me since I don't have the promise. And patience is reassuring me that, hey, like God will give it to you. Do not worry, just trust in God. And so this is what patience does for us. This is the perfect work that patience does within us. That patience makes us perfect in our life because it refines us, but also that patience makes us complete. It'll make us complete even though we don't have the promise right now in our life, right? And in the remaining of the verse, it says that we will lack nothing. So because we are complete within our hearts, because patience reassures us, because we're not incomplete because of the promise, we are completed through the patience, right? We are no longer lacking anything, right? For example, say you have that promise that God will bless you in the workplace, right? You may be thinking, oh, what's it called? That, oh, I'm lacking in my job, that, oh, I'm lacking in my finances, oh, I'm lacking in this, I'm lacking in that. But, when we have patience, right, we will no longer feel that lack. Even though, you may not be making that perfect salary that you expect, right? You're not lacking in your finances because patience is reassuring you. Patience is guiding you, right? And so the purpose of trials in life is to achieve all this work, right? The purpose of trials in life is for us to be tested of our faith, right? For our faith to be tested. And the purpose of our faith being tested is so that we may develop patience. And the purpose of having patience in our life is for us to be complete and perfect through the waiting season of God, right? The purpose of patience is to in this time of season of waiting, right? Waiting for the promise of God, that we are not waiting passively. We are not waiting uselessly, but we're waiting in perfection. We're waiting in patience. We're waiting in completeness in our hearts that, God will achieve this for us. And therefore, that's why it says that we are lacking nothing. In the Bible, in Hebrews chapter 11, it says that, when God told Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac, right? It says that Abraham had complete faith in God. That Abraham said that, even if Isaac died, that God will raise up my son Isaac from the dead. That's what Hebrews chapter 11 says. So look at the faith that Abraham had, right? And that faith only comes through trials. Think about the trial that Abraham faced, right? Abraham faced childlessness for 10, 20, 30 years after God promised him that he'll get a child, right? So because of that trial, the 30-year trial, his faith was perfected. So that's why it says that, Abraham did not waver when God said to sacrifice his son Isaac. And so we see, in summary, right, that trials refine our faith because it forces us to depend on God. And as we depend on God, we build patience because our present circumstances are difficult, right? And so this patience then changes our hearts and builds within us trust in God, which perfects us and that causes us to lack nothing. So I hope you guys were blessed by this message. And if you guys were blessed, leave a like down below, leave a comment to let me know you guys are blessed. And, subscribe to this channel or you stay more up to date with content like this. So I hope you guys were blessed and see you guys next time.